In this video, you are going to explore the keywords to remember and the role of the CPS. Here are the keywords to remember. Arrest. This is the action of seizing someone and taking them into custody. Police can do this based on the suspicion of you committing a crime. Remember, arrest is based on a suspicion and is very different to being charged. Being charged is when you're formally accused of a criminal offence. This is usually done by the Crown Prosecution Service, also known as a CPS. Police can also do this if they are to issue a warrant. Evidence is needed to be charged, as opposed to just suspicion for arrest. Conviction. This is a formal declaration by the verdict of a jury in a court, or the decision of a judge in a court of law, that someone is guilty of a criminal offence. Conviction exists once someone goes to court, the evidence is heard on both sides, and the individual is found guilty. Acquittal is a judgment or verdict that a person is not guilty of the crime with which they have been charged. Acquittal is the opposite of a conviction. This is when someone goes to court, the evidence has been heard on both sides, and the person has been found not guilty, and is therefore acquitted, not convicted. Custodial sentence. This is a sentence. A sentence is a punishment given by the judge that involves one's right to liberty and freedom being taken away, e.g. prison. Non-custodial sentence. This is a sentence that does not involve one's right to liberty and freedom being taken away from them, e.g. community service or fines, etc. That brings us to the end of this part of the video. What are the keywords to remember? We're now going to move on to look at the role of the Crown Prosecution Service, also known as the CPS. You might see this slide on other videos as an introduction to a range of agencies that make up the whole of the criminal justice system. The criminal justice system refers to the investigation of a crime from the initial investigation to acquittal or conviction. It is one of the major public services in the country. It employs 400,000 staff across the following agencies: the Police Service, the Crown Prosecution Service, Her Majesty's Court Service, the National Offender Management Service, this includes prisons and probation, the Youth Justice Board, a public body which attempts to prevent offending by children and young people. We're now going to look at the role of the Crown Prosecution Service. Key information you need to know about the Crown Prosecution Service will be displayed as questions and answers. What is the CPS? It's an organisation that makes the decision about whether a criminal case will go to court or not. It works with police and courts to make their decision. When was it introduced? It was introduced in 1986 to prosecute criminal cases investigated by police in England and Wales. Why was it introduced? It was introduced to be independent from the police, meaning that their decisions were not influenced by the police. Please be clear that although the CPS works with police and courts to help make their decision, they are not influenced by the police themselves, and that their decisions over whether a case should go to court is based on the evidence that's gathered by police officers during their investigation. How does the CPS decide on whether a case should go to court? This is a very important piece of information. They use a 2-point evidential test. This means they must find out the 2 following points. Number 1, is there sufficient or enough evidence to charge the individual and have them go to court? Secondly, they must show that it is in the public's interest to take the case to court, e.g. if the suspect is a danger to society. These are the 2 points that must be fulfilled in order for an individual to be taken to court and trialled. Why is the CPS criticised? The CPS is criticised for not being independent enough and being too influenced by the police. You might want to put this on flashcards where you have the question on one side and the answer on the other. This will help you play games with your flashcards. You can have the question on one side and guess the answer, or you can have the answer on one side and try to guess the question. Alternatively, you can have 2 separate sets of flashcards. On one set you have just questions. On the other set you have just answers. Then you can play the game pairs where you match the question to the answer. And you can do this with other people. Remember, not every revision technique works for everyone. So try out a few new things and see what is best for you. So the police arrest and charge a suspect after interviewing the suspect and potential witnesses, as well as gathering evidence and recording statements. They then make the decision to refer the evidence against the suspect to the CPS, the Crown Prosecution Service, so that the Crown Prosecution Service can charge them with the appropriate offence or offences. What that means is that the police arrest the individual. They then gather evidence through investigations, recording statements from others, collecting information from witnesses, CCTV, etc. They then refer the evidence to the CPS. The CPS then use the 2-point evidential test to decide whether that individual goes to court and what they'd be trialled for. Ultimately, they charge them with the appropriate offence. The CPS does the 5 following things. Number 1. They advise the police on court cases for a possible prosecution. What we mean by prosecution is legal proceedings in court. Number 2, they review cases submitted by the police for prosecution. Number 3, they decide the charge. Number 4, they prepare cases for court. And number 5, they present those cases at court. If you are writing notes on these, number your bullet points. Do not use little round circles. It's much easier for you to remember if you have numbers next to your statements. If the CPS decide to proceed, the charge is then decided and the police are informed. The police then charge the accused with the appropriate offence and either bail is given or the accused is remanded in custody. If the CPS decide not to charge, then the case is discontinued. We've come to the end of this video. In the next video, you'll be looking at the purposes of punishment and what are the different types of punishment.